Happening now, breaking news, violent clashes right in the heart of Istanbul as police fire water cannons and clouds of tear gas to send thousands of protesters fleeing. We have full coverage. CNN's Arwa Damon and Nick Payton-Walsh, they are both right in the thick of it all. They are on the scene. And we have expert analysis from CNN's Christiana Amanpour and Fareed Zakaria. We want to welcome our viewers in the United States and around the world. I'm Wolf Blitzer. You're in the Situation Room.
This is CNN Breaking News.
The breaking news we're following: tens of thousands forced to flee as police fire giant clouds of tear gas and water cannons on demonstrations in Turkey's Taksim Square, right in the heart of Istanbul. From there, mass chaos. Thousands of protesters refusing to be deterred. They launched fireworks. They piled back into the square amid balls of fire and loud bangs. CNN's senior international correspondent Arwa Damon and CNN's Nick Payton-Walsh, they are both right in the middle of it all. They have been for the past several hours. They're even being forced to put on gas masks to continue their reporting for all of us. They're joining us along with our chief international correspondent, Christiana Amanpour. Arwa, first to you. Set the scene. What's going on? Because it's been awful. The stakes clearly enormous. Arwa, we just lost Arwa for a second. We're going to get back to Arwa. Nick Payton-Walsh. Let's go to Nick first. Nick, what do you see?
Well, the latest moves we've seen behind us here, the police have sent bulldozers into the Taksim Square area ahead of Gezi Park. Now, that sounds incremental, but it's key because it shows their positioning to clear away much of the debris left from protester barricades. There have been fires there as well. We have been wondering what precisely is the goal of the police presence here. I think they're looking to clear that area up. They are maintaining a presence in the central square. Key, the smoke billowing across the square at the moment is, it seems, from a fire, an excavator which has been torched near Gezi Park, part of the construction equipment working around here, and a barricade fire as well. We haven't seen much tear gas. I hasten to be cautious to say that because obviously each time I do, we hear another volley. In the past 10-15 minutes, police did take up position and fire a substantial amount in the direction of one of the roads leading down past Gezi Park. At this point, we are hearing some protest chanting, but the emphasis for police right now seems to be amassing in that area of Taksim Square in front of Gezi Park and before you reach the main street of Istiklal here, Wolf.
We're showing our viewers, Nick, live pictures now from Taksim Square. We see a lot of trucks there. We see some lights. Obviously a very tense situation. It's already just past midnight local time in Istanbul. Are we expecting an escalation in the coming hours?
It's hard to predict. This has been volatile. There are still hundreds, if not thousands, of protesters in the side streets around here, which appear to be intermittent battles with the police. And, of course, the outstanding question, what is the fate of the hundreds, if not thousands, of protesters inside Gezi Park itself, that area of greenery, trees, the very heart of the city here, which has been at the beginning of the protest, conservationists wanting it to be demolished to make room for a mall or a museum, whatever the precise government plan actually was for it. But behind me now, there has been a temporary lull. We were seeing during the night protesters surging back towards police after the tear gas had been fired at them, had dissipated in the wind. That hasn't happened for a couple of hours now. But the question people are asking is, what is the police strategy here? I've been standing here for about 16 hours watching clashes. Only a brief lull when a peaceful protest took place. Thousands of people then dissipated, forced to flee because of a massive volley of police tear gas. We haven't yet seen, it seems, a strategy to hold the ground that police advance in towards, and people are beginning to ask the question, why are we seeing these images for such a sustained period? Surely the police had longer to plan for these, how to deal with a reasonably ragtag, disorganized bunch of protesters, Wolf.
And this is all happening in the heart of Istanbul, Nick. This is a major a facility, a major park there, right near all the so many hotels. Tourism, I assume, has dried up virtually completely as a result of what's going on. A lot of people canceling their trips to Turkey right now. Give us a little sense of perspective, Nick, because you're there. How significant is this area to Istanbul?
It's the very, very heart. The main street, Istiklal, ends here. Taksim Square, one of the key landmarks, the centre here. Gezi, an extension from that. The main hotels around here, government buildings, to a very important part of the city. Certainly its commercial heart. You say tourism has dried up. Actually, last night I was walking through, and there were some tourists in evidence attracted by what had begun to feel like a relaxed sense of permanence amongst the protesters, certainly inside Gezi Park itself. Even a fashion shoot I saw taking place inside one of the burned-out buses that protesters had left to block the road. We were wondering at that point, though, the numbers dropping in Taksim Square to virtually no protesters and less inside the cabinet itself. Would the police take advantage of those lower numbers to make a move? And at 8 o'clock this morning, that's precisely what they did, almost strolling in initially, but pretty soon that gave way to clashes. An organised hardcore of protesters ready to meet them, Molotov cocktails, rocks, even an elaborate firework firing device which seemed to be aimed at police ranks too. The Istanbul governor has used the firing of fireworks by protesters as a justification for some of the police tactics. There seemed to be a back and forth that went on for hours. The police never quite willing to escalate too much force, not quite as heavy-handed as we'd seen at the beginning of these clashes, that heavy-handedness having fueled so much of the protest. But the real question was exactly why did they fire that volley of tear gas, which during the middle of a peaceful protest caused thousands of people to literally run for their safety all across this increasingly dark square.
Nick, stand by. I want to continue showing our viewers these live pictures coming from Taksim Square, right in the heart of Istanbul, Turkey. Clearly a major NATO ally of the United States. There's lots at stake right now. Cristiano Amanpour and Fareed Zakaria are both joining us for some analysis. Cristiano, you look at these pictures, you can't help but say, is this a repetition of what we saw at Tahrir Square in Cairo? Within a matter of only a few days, it led to the end of the Mubarak regime. Give us some perspective on what's going on in Turkey.
Well, interesting you ask that, because obviously people looking from the outside are wondering precisely that. It's significant that the Prime Minister, Erdogan, said that this is no Turkish Spring. And I today asked the former British Foreign Secretary, Jack Straw, who just happened to have been in Istanbul during most of these protests. He also didn't think that that is what this represents. Nobody really thinks that this is the case right now. But clearly, you know, this is the first major challenge to Prime Minister Erdogan. He's in his third term. He's been in office for about 11 years, and they're trying to figure out how now they're going to deal with this. I spoke to his chief advisor earlier, who said that the protesters will be allowed to stay in Gezi Park. That is the green area in Taksim. He said they'll be allowed to stay there.
Christian, hold on for a second, because it looks like there's some major activity going on with police. Let me bring back Nick Payton-Walsh for a moment. Nick, what's happening right now?
Well, sir, I'm holding my tear gas in my hand because we have just seen now an armoured police vehicle moving down towards the left-hand side of Gezi Park, a road partially under construction there, concrete, blocked off by protester barricades behind which they had been amassing. Just a couple of 10 seconds ago, a minute, a massive volley of tear gas from the police in that direction. And now, 1, 2, 3, I'm going to have to put this gas mask on, I'm afraid. A significant number of vehicles heading in that direction. It is clear the police want to move down towards that barricade. It is the last remaining still a stronghold of protest outside of Gezi Park itself that we can actually see. And when that tear gas is fired, it does waft across the square towards our live position. So forgive the obvious difficulty you'll be having hearing me here, but this is the first we've seen in about an hour of a concerted effort by the police to advance towards protesters' positions. And that is happening down the side. A water cannon now being used by the police to push back protesters. And there has, of course, been a fire burning there for quite some time now, Wolf. But yet again, this tactic of surging towards protesters, trying to get them to disperse using tear gas and other means, and then we have to ask, are they going to try and hold that particular road? Do they have a strategy to retain control? Or yet again, will they move back and then finally see protesters retake that area again, Wolf.
If that tear gas is reaching you, Nick, you may want to strap that mask as you're doing right now, because otherwise you're going to be in trouble. Hold on for a moment. Arwa Damon is on the scene for us as well. Arwa, you're joining us on the phone. Do you have a mask on yourself?
Well, we're basically right now on the other side of where Nick is reporting from, standing in the park that is actually above that street that the tear gas is being fired down. And as Nick was reporting that, masses of people running back into the park, trying to stay away from those fumes. And they really have been into something of a science. They will run away from where the tear gas is getting close to them. People will already be lined up ready with this white peppermint-smelling fluid that they spray into your eyes, and it really helps to ease the sting. And then they erupt in chants and then slowly move fast forward. And this has been pretty much what we've been seeing all night. We were also down in the square this evening, Wolf, when tens of thousands of people had converged. And the riot police at that point actually seemed as if they were relaxed. That's what we were reporting. Some sort of altercation broke out right in front of us between a small group of protesters and the riot police. And within seconds, that erupted into full-scale chaos with the tear gas being fired. With, I don't know if you heard that as well. The crowd's around me now filming the riot police, but that altercation is what led to this massive crackdown that we saw by the riot police. They didn't physically enter Gezi Park, but they did, with great fire tear gas into it, and it is a pretty densely populated area with demonstrators. You can just imagine the chaos that creates every single time that actually takes place, Wolf.
Tear gas clearly in the air. You can see Nick Payton Walsh with that gas mask on. Arwa Damon, stand by for a moment. Christian Fareed, stand by as well. We're showing our viewers here in the United States and around the world what's going on right in the heart of Istanbul right now. This is a major U.S. ally, a NATO ally, and what's going on right now is ugly. We'll have continuing coverage right after this.
This is CNN Breaking News.
We're following the breaking news out of Turkey. These are live pictures you're seeing right now. It's after midnight in Istanbul, where police have just come in with more tear gas, water cannon. This is a dangerous situation. There are thousands of protesters on the ground right now in Taksim Square. That's right in the heart of Istanbul. Arwa Damon and Nick Payton Walsh, they're on the ground for us. We'll have analysis from Fareed Zakari and Christian Amanpour. But Arwa, let me go back with you right now. Tell our viewers who may just be tuning in, if they're watching in the United States or around the world, what's going on right now, because there had been a lull, but all of a sudden the violence has picked up.
And that really has been the trend ever since these demonstrations began, and it's certainly something that has been amplified throughout the day today. I am on the edge of Gezi Park, that is right above the road that tear gas is currently being fired down. Demonstrators around chanting right now that everywhere is Taksim, everywhere is the resistance. And you're hearing more of that sort of language where people are describing themselves increasingly as being the resistance against the government. Because if you will remember, this did all begin because of a government project to turn this park that many view as being the last green space in the heart of Istanbul into a shopping mall. And then because of the excessive use of force by the riot police, these demonstrations have then taken on a life of their own. And they're about much more than trying to protect this park. They're about demanding an end to what Prime Minister Erdogan's opponents view as being his increasingly authoritarian rule, as his government's trying to impose their conservative Islamic ideologies on the entire nation, which really up until now has prided itself and to a certain degree really defined itself as being a secular country.
All right.
But people here really...
Arwa, hold on for a moment. Arwa, just hold on for one moment, because Nick Payton Walsh, he's got an excellent view of what's going on. Clearly, the demonstrators moving in. You see the fire. Nick Payton Walsh is wearing a gas mask because of all of the tear gas right now. Nick, narrate a little bit to describe what's going on. We're showing our viewers these live pictures from Taksim Square.
You're seeing those armoured vehicles, Wolf, move away from what was a protest, a barricade blocking access to the left-hand side road that goes down the edge of Gezi Park. Now, about 5 minutes ago, police moved in heavily, a lot of tear gas fired, 2 fire engines coming in behind those armoured vehicles. There are some fires there, an excavator on fire for nearly an hour now. They were clearly trying to move in that direction. Now, we don't know if they turned back because the protesters simply put up too much resistance, or whether we're in fact looking at them having accomplished what they wanted to and moving back instead. But a massive volley of tear gas that we haven't heard for quite some particular time, and you begin to get a sense of what the police strategy is here. They seem to want to move down that particular road. They have amassed excavators, bulldozers on the central part of Taksim Square over there. You are just hearing ambulances moving in. One of the big questions about this is how many people have been injured in these clashes. Let me just pause to let you hear the protesters.
Hey, Nick, we see a bulldozer right in the heart of Taksim Square right now. I don't know what that bulldozer is getting ready to do. Do you have any idea what it's doing there and what's going on with that bulldozer?
There is a lot of debris in the center of that square, some of it from barricades, some of it from fires, items burning previously. They obviously want to clear away these barricades that obstruct the police's ability to move in on protesters. We've seen them do that round here in the area surrounding the live position where we are for much of the day. I think part of the police strategy is to clear as many thoroughfares through and around as they can at this particular time, and those bulldozers are clearly putting some of that into effect. But these strategies do keep being interrupted by volleys of tear gas, surges forward from protesters. We're seeing less of those in the past hour or so, certainly around where I'm standing, but you heard there the chanting of protesters, their morale still evident, a lot of anger, and we're really going to have to see in the hours ahead if police are beginning to get a lid on this, or in fact actually we're just going to see this standoff continuing in other areas. Wolf, I have to apologize, I do have to pause between sentences to take breath through this gas mask.
Yeah, you gotta, as someone who has reported with a gas mask myself, you gotta make sure those straps are really tight. Otherwise, you're gonna be in trouble. You're gonna start coughing pretty soon. So you might want to tighten up those straps around your head. Nick, stand by for a moment, because I want to continue showing our viewers. You see that the bulldozer right there, right in the heart of Taksim Square. Fareed Zakaria, you're watching what's going on. How would you describe this situation that's unfolding? Clearly a major crisis for Turkey.
Wolf, it's a major crisis. This is, if you want an analogy, this is Chicago in 1968. This is a huge culture clash in a democratic country. Prime Minister Erdogan has been elected 3 times, but remember, he has never received more than 50% of the popular vote. The way Turkish parliamentary democracy works, he has a majority in parliament, but there's 50% of the country that is deeply distrustful. And what you see here is a huge culture clash. The Anatolian groups that have voted for Prime Minister Erdogan, very different from the Istanbul more secular, more urban groups over here. So there's a culture clash at work here. We saw it in 1968 in the United States, in Chicago, in cities around the country. It's happened in other places. But the actual development, the spark that led to this, is about the development of Taksim Square. But there's something much, much deeper going on here. It's 2 Turkeys that are coming to head in Taksim Square, 2 very different countries with a very different vision of the future.
Hold on for a moment, Fareed. Nick, you've taken off your gas mask. Has the tear gas moved away? Is it okay for you to be there without your gas mask?
That seems to be the case. It's always hard to work out whether we're having gas from the fires blown towards us, smoke from the fires, or fresh amounts of tear gas. It's always perilous to take the mask off, because as soon as you do, and just hearing it now, in fact, tear gas again being fired by the riot police, it's always a gamble whether it blows towards us at all. But that clean-up in Gezi Park, just before Gezi Park, on the square in front of it, still continuing. The bulldozers you talked about earlier on. And we're trying to work out quite what the police's next move really is. The tear gas that they seem to be firing it down that road I was referring to alongside Gezi Park. Protesters very good at throwing it back. They've just been doing that as well. You can hear those repeated shots. And it's one of the things we've really noticed here, that the use of tear gas sometimes feels indiscriminate. It's fired in a general direction. They seem to fire a lot at a particular time to completely disable an area or move people out from it. In Ankara, the capital, last week, people came up to me showing how tear gas rounds had in fact hit their body. A man had shown me a wound in the face, a wound on his arm. Many people injured by those fast-flying large rounds as they hurtle through the air, and many of them in fact have come near where we're standing at this particular point. So a lot of concern for the safety of protesters. You can hear that again. You can see, I think now, perhaps even water cannons being fired at this particular point towards the protesters. Those armoured, they're called Toma trucks, armoured water cannon trucks designed to disrupt protests, been all over Turkey for the last 12 days. They're moving again towards protesters down there. And still that question sustaining, Wolf, what is the end game? How are they going to get control of this area?
Yeah, we're hearing a lot of volleys of tear gas. We're hearing a lot of that, Nick, that's being fired right now together with the water cannon. This situation is clearly escalating right now, even though it's approaching 12:30 a.m. local time, well after midnight in Istanbul. Nick, I want you to stand by for a moment. Farida standing by. Christiana Mapur is with us as well, and Arwa Damon is on the ground in Istanbul. We'll take a quick break. Much more of the breaking news right after this.